Hello, welcome to Mental Health in Business. Have the pleasure today of talking with Dan Roberts, who's uh, an influential coach and entrepreneur who has done many, many interesting things, some of which I'm really looking forward to, all of which I'm looking forward to talking to. We won't have time to do it all today, but I'm very happy and grateful that you've kindly said yes to my invitation. So welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Nicholas. Good to be here.
So one of the things that one of the things that I think my audience is interested in, I'm certainly interested in, is uh, your background, the background that you have that has contributed to your many and interesting endeavors of health uh, and all kinds of good things. Could you tell us a little bit about where you started and what it was like growing up?
Sure. Just for I assume people don't know me. So my job now is I'm a coach and I run a wellbeing company in London, and we're a relatively successful company. A lot of things going on. For me, it all started when I was in my sort of teenage years. I was a coach. I was a sports coach for quite a few years, and then I transitioned to become a strength and conditioning coach. And essentially, I looked after professional athletes for about 10 years. And then after that, I started working with people in the public eye, a lot of models, a lot of actors. And then my career kind of took off in London, and I built a team and I built a few companies. And now I sit here talking to you, but older than I used to be, a bit
Yeah,
wiser maybe.
well,
But
that's
I've been doing this for a long time. I've been coaching for 30 years. So it's
wow.
kind of all I can do, really, if I'm honest.
Tell me, did you come from a particularly athletic family?
No, no. Um, No, not at all. My parents were both academics, actually. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was younger, and I tried a lot of different jobs out. I lived in different countries as well. I moved around a lot from the age of like 18 to 25, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But when I stumbled across personal training, for me it was like the perfect combination of being free, not having a boss,
Hmm.
be able to be with people. I love being with people, and I love teaching. Because essentially, to be a teacher, you have to also be a student. So, to be a great teacher, a great coach, tutor, however you label it, you spend your time learning stuff and then teaching. You learn
Mm.
stuff and then you teach it. And for me, that's the absolute most amazing, blessed way to spend one's time in life.
Well, we have a lot in common in that area. Isn't it called beginner's mind? Is that what you just described? Beginner's mind. When you the more you know, the more you're aware of what you don't know. And
Yeah, I guess there's a thing in martial arts where we call about the white belt mentality. And it's something you're supposed to keep as you progress. And the danger is, in traditional martial arts, you start off a white belt and you eventually get to black belt. But the danger is you start believing your own hype when you get good, and you start being less open minded. But when you're a beginner, you're often quite humble and quite curious. And I think the trick in life is to maintain that as we get success.
yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. There's a wonderful book that one of my mentors wrote many years ago called The Fallacy of Understanding,
Hmm.
which comes out of a rich philosophical history, which is very similar. That the whole notion of knowing things often means that there's nothing left to learn. Whereas real knowledge and wisdom, I suppose, comes from having that sense of, this is what I know at this point, but there's always more.
Hmm.
And how many times have we had conversations with people where, it's like, oh yeah, I know that. It's like, well, not really. I mean, you don't really ever know that, right? I mean, you know something, I know when I have supervisees who tell me, how did you know how to do that? I said, well, I've been doing this for almost 40 years. That's why I should probably know a little bit about what I'm doing. But that's great. And then I assume by talking to you a little bit and looking at your very interesting online presence that it's not just physical for you. It's not just the physical body that you're interested in. You're interested in the whole package. How do you incorporate all of that as a
Well,
teacher, as a coach?
I like I like helping people. For me, that's my biggest passion. How I do that is slightly irrelevant. I mean, I started off working with athletes, which was very technical in terms of strength and conditioning, like teaching Olympic lifting and plyometrics and stuff. And I guess as I evolved naturally, just by trying to be a good coach, I I realized I had to also know about other things. I had to understand a little bit about nutrition. I had to understand a little bit about psychology,
Yeah, for
because there's
sure.
no point having all these skills. And if someone comes to you and they're upset, what do you do? Do you ignore it? Do you give them a hug? Or do you take them a coffee? Or you have to understand
Hmm.
their personality and what's best. So you can't help but have a wider understanding of humanity, I guess, and human condition if you want to be good at teaching, because you need that relationship with your client. And that's always the basis, I think, to any kind of change, any kind of coach, be it a business mentor or a physio, whatever you're doing, you have to have that trusting, solid relationship, and then your client is open to the suggestions and the advice you can give.
Yeah, that's great. We call it therapeutic alliance in my field, right? You have to have it just means you have to have that some felt sense of connection and safety, otherwise nothing else happens.
Therapeutic. I didn't know I had a word. Good to know.
To,
Therapeutic alliance. Okay,
therapeutic alliance.
I'm going to use that. Make it sound clever. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid my field goes out of its way to obfuscate more than clarify. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's interesting. Right. And another thing I find really exciting and refreshing about you is just what you said. You're not you're not just a linear thinker. I mean, we have to have aspects of linear thinking. Goal direction, and this thing, that thing, this thing. But everything's happening at the same time, right? So the mind's happening at the same time, the body's happening, something else is happening. Um, and I think it's a good teacher who's able to connect to more, not less of that.
I think even in the world of business, I remember when I was building my fitness business, I was looking around and I wasn't really that impressed with other fitness businesses. So I looked at other industries and I ended up looking at, there were two things. I looked at high end fashion. I looked at Dior and Hermes and these kind of brands, Saint Laurent. And I also
Hmm.
looked at hotels. I looked, particularly in London, I looked at Claridge's in particular. And I studied them and I saw how they kind of did things. And I decided, because I was going more and more kind of luxury fitness, I guess, my brand. And
Hmm.
because there weren't any good role models, I kind of nicked ideas from Claridge's and from Saint Laurent. And I took like even the business model ideas and customer service ideas. And that kind of made my company stand out quite a bit, because a lot in the fitness industry, a lot of people copy each other. I don't know what it's like in your industry, but I find when people don't really know what they're doing, they tend to look left and right and see what other people in their field are doing, rather than actually
Sure.
being free from that and actually being creative, which means taking the limits off and, like we said earlier, looking at the bigger picture.
Hmm. Was part of what you discovered that they were interested in um, not customer satisfaction, but they were paying attention to their customers in different ways?
Yeah, it wasn't paying attention. It was like an obsession. I guess a bit like Amazon do now. Amazon's kind of obsessed with customer service, and I think they
Hmm.
do such a good job that it's kind of changed the game for online businesses. But just just really treating your clients like VIPs, I guess.
Well, like people.
Yeah, but going beyond that. You know what I mean? Like going
Oh,
beyond that. So if I had a client, like the way I grew my fitness business, and it became more international, was if a client, and let's say a client was in London and they were going to New York for the week, what I'd do is I'd find a good trainer, a good masseuse, all the rest of it. I wouldn't charge for it. I wanted them to carry on their kind of well-being journey. So I'd
mhm.
rather be in charge of it because I'm a control freak. And that over the years gave me this incredible kind of network of great trainers, great nutritionists, great
Mm.
experts all over the world. And then when clients came to me, I realized I wasn't just a trainer, I was like a concierge service. A lot
Yes.
of my clients work all over the world, and I could, if they want a Pilates teacher in Paris, I know the best one. If they want to
Oh.
train with Matt Damon's trainer in LA, fine, I'll get him. Like
Hmm.
over the years, you develop these kind of relationships, but it's all kind of organic. It wasn't like networking. It was just me trying to look after my clients. So the intention was quite pure. I think it was quite honourable. But
Yeah.
in turn, that ended up me having this amazing network of people, and that's why now, as a company, we have all these referrals from all these places because I kind of gave clients to all these people around the world. So it's weird, just by being nice and doing your job properly, essentially. You get all this good stuff back.
Well, I think it's, I mean, I think you're humble. I mean, you know, you're very smart, obviously, and you're, you also can connect to people and you enjoy it. And I think that's unfortunately at a low point. I mean, you know, I'm always amazed when I walk into a shop for anything, it doesn't matter what it is, and they actually know what they're talking about and they actually listen to me. So when I go and I say, you know, I like Cabernet and they don't know anything about Cabernet and they couldn't care less, I mean, I'm probably not going to go back there, right? Um, I find that more and more with the people that I'm talking to, exactly this thing that whether you're in coaching or you're selling stuff or you're teaching, you know, the people who seem to be the healthiest and the most successful are people who genuinely feel the need to connect. I mean, it
Hmm.
sounds simple, right? But I think a lot of people can't do that. And I think I mean, we could talk about that. You know, what is the capacity to connect? I think the prerequisite for that is a feeling of safety. You know, you have to have, you know, you have
How
to
do you
be,
mean?
well, I mean, you know, when you went out and you were, you know, kicking the tires and looking at these other corporations and, you know, I mean, that's a good amount of agency you had to bring to bear. You had to put yourself out there and find and you had to acknowledge what you didn't know. Like I don't really know this yet. I'm gonna go find out about it. That's rare
But
as
again,
opposed to
it follows on from I've been a coach all my life, so I'm used to, you know, if I want to become a qualified in Pilates, then I have to do a course. I'm a beginner, then I teach it, then I'm an expert. If I want to teach yoga, I'm a beginner, I learn about it, then I'm an expert. So I'm kind
right.
of used to the process of being rubbish at something, learning about it, and then people thinking I'm good at it. So I guess that's kind of instilled in my brain somewhere, you know?
Yeah, no, and that's relatively rare in my experience to actually want to do the work. What are your favorite days like these days? You have so many interesting, you know, corporations. You have tutorials. You have coaching. What's the
What's the
best day
question?
for you?
What are my favorite days like?
Yeah, there's a wonderful movie out, by the way, if you haven't seen it, called Best Days. Have you seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you would love this movie.
Would it help me answer the question better? If I watched
It would.
it.
It
Damn it.
would.
Okay, I should have watched it earlier. Um,
It's about a Japanese man who cleans toilets in Tokyo. It's almost a silent movie. It's
okay.
unbelievably good. Anyway, what else?
Um, I think it's a really good question. Um, it's interesting I'm 48, so you I'm not old, but I've lived a little bit of life so far. And it's interesting how our values and our ideas change as we go on. So my answer now in 10 years' time, will be different from today. And it's very different to how it was 20 years ago. One thing has been a through line through my career, though, in my life is I've always loved adventure. Now, that manifested in more kind of cliched or obvious way when I was younger, which was traveling the world, living in different countries, experiencing different cultures, the classical sense of adventure, um, and doing, you know, trying new sports, fighting in Thailand and, you know, surfing in Hawaii, all that kind of stuff. Now, as I'm a little bit calmer and slightly less extreme in my personality, I like my life, which is a very standardized life. I'm married. I live in a house in Surrey, and my life isn't wild. There's not much. There's not many strippers and cocaine in my life nowadays. Not like it was, but I'm saying it's like there's not. It's not outwardly that exciting, but I'm really happy because I'm happily married and I've got a career I love, and I feel very centered. I feel very grateful, and I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, and I like that. It's one of the best things about being not being in a company, running your own business, being self-employed, being an entrepreneur, is you don't really know what's going to happen in the future, and I'd hate to know. We all have these goals and plans, but imagine you knew exactly how every day is going to live out for the rest of your life. I think it would be so philosophically depressing. You'd probably want to end it. I know I would if I knew
Racially,
exactly what's going to happen. So even though my life is a bit more certain than it used to be, it's still I don't know how things are going to pan out, um, and I like that. So my days today, logistically, I'm on the computer, I'm coaching clients, I'm on phone calls, doing meetings, just like everyone else. But I'm
hmm
enjoying it, and I'm very grateful for my body. I can still do the things I could when I was younger, which I'm grateful for. Um, I'm not as I used to be not vain. I used to be a bit vainer in my 20s. I guess we all did, but I'm happy that I'm not vain. Like I really love my body, and it's got nothing to do with how it looks.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm in a good place. So it doesn't really matter what I do on my day to day. It's more about the mindset, I think. So
Yes, absolutely.
yeah,
No,
sorry, very
no.
convoluted, woolly answer, but
Yeah.
I'll watch that movie, then I'll give you a better answer. Okay.
Well, one of the great things about this movie is that there aren't any answers.
Oh, okay.
Um,
There we go. Good.
no, I think what you're describing is, in my wheelhouse, is called, psychological integration. And I think when you feel integrated, and it's interesting that the whole business about what's exciting. I got divorced about 4 years ago. I have a girlfriend now, and I'm very happy. But I went through the apps, the dating apps. Oh my
Hmm.
goodness, the dating apps. Some sort of person, I'm sure, is writing a really good book about how dating apps reflect the culture. And as a sociologist, I'm sure the sociology people are just having a heyday with this. So why am I saying this? On these apps, aside from the sort of gross and disturbing things, there's a great emphasis on excitement. Are you an exciting person? Now that means apparently, are you jumping out of airplanes? Are you going to burning buildings? Right?
Like an
It's a kind
Instagram
of
version of adventure, isn't it?
right,
Yeah.
right, or cartoon like. It's sort of
Yeah.
cartoon like. How many babes are you sleeping with, or how many airplanes if you jumped out of. I just think like, what is going on here? I mean, that's not a person. That's just kind of like a
Yeah, but has
checklist for
isn't this?
something.
I mean, hasn't social media kind of dumbed down everything to that to a
Oh,
certain degree? Like,
completely.
it's like everything has to be. People pretend to do podcasts and do like fake little 5 second features just so they can get more views on TikTok rather than
Right.
having that real conversation. It's like everything's being dumbed down a little bit.
Yeah, have you did you happen to read a couple of years ago this really good article about that from she's a Harvard Business School person, and she said her thesis was essentially you can't have a democracy and a technocracy. You can have one or the other. And
Yeah,
I
that
think
makes
that's
sense.
I think that's one of the things where yeah. So when you say it's not as exciting, I suspect it's differently exciting, right?
Well, yeah, like I mean, like I said, when I was younger, like backpacking, and I did it like the traditional way where I had no money and no rich parents, no money, no credit card, and you rock up in India with like $400 attached to your in your sock, and you just sort of see what happens. I mean, this was before phones and social media. It's
Yeah,
kind of exciting. Um, and now I find now like building a business or business is exciting, or
right.
having, trying to be a good husband and having building a family. I find that exciting, but it's, yeah, it changes. But I think confidence is an important one. I was chatting with a friend of mine earlier about confidence earlier today, and she was like, one of my clients was asking me about how to be more confident, and I'd love your answer to this, but I was saying to her that the reason I'm confident now is because I've been through like tougher times, not necessarily like emotionally, but let's say in terms of business, I've started from scratch many times. Like when I went to Australia, started from scratch, build a business. When I went to Brazil, started from scratch, build a business. Same in New York, same in London, same in New
Hmm.
Zealand. So I've been all over where I've started from scratch with no money, no contacts, and had to kind of within a week make money, or else I'll be sleeping on the street somewhere. And when you do that and come out the other side as an entrepreneur, you get very confident that, like, if all my clients left tomorrow and my website got turned off, or a pandemic happens, for example, it doesn't stress me out at all.
Mm,
Because
mm.
but I wouldn't have that just by intellectually feeling confident. You have to actually go through times which are quite sort of tough, I think, to build confidence. But I'm really interested because she was asking me, how come you're confident? And I couldn't really give her a full answer, but I was telling her about you, and she's like, oh, you should ask him. So I'm asking you.
You're asking me.
Tell me, like, I'd love to know your opinion about the importance of confidence and how we can create it or grow it.
That's a great question. I'm going to have to deconstruct that question a little bit. Confidence. I assume confidence here means like based in reality confidence. You mean true confidence. You don't mean
I
illusory
mean, true
confidence.
confidence, as in not pretending to be confident, but you actually really feel confident in situations, in new situations.
Right. So I use the word agency a lot. Agency just means, the belief that I can take myself from here to there. That's agency.
Okay.
You have agency you obviously have a great deal of agency. So I think the more agency you have and the more you use it and the more successful you are at it, the more confident you are. But that's real confidence. It's based in reality. So you were in different places of the world, you had nothing going on, and then you just made it happen. And you made it happen again and again and again. So you came to see yourself as someone who can do that. Um, confidence, confidence to me is often misused, but in this case, agency. Like you have a great sense of agency. They could take it all away, and that you would end up on your feet. I think part of the discourse today, in terms of everybody, everybody knows all these psychological terms, right? So everybody's a narcissist, or everybody's a whatever they are.
Everyone's had trauma.
Everybody's had trauma, right?
Yeah.
The best definition of trauma was, you know, my friend Sigmund Freud, who said that trauma is what happens when you become unrecognizable, um, which just cuts the quick. It doesn't mean
Mm.
that there's any formula for this, but it means you wake up one day and you and your environment just don't make sense anymore. That's a trauma. Um, yes. So, what am I trying to say? I think there are a lot of superficial areas that get too much attention. And I think in the wrong hands, confidence is one of those words, right? The reason you're not confident isn't because you're not making enough money or you're not muscular. The reason you're not confident is you don't know who you are.
Mm. Okay.
It's a lack of confidence. It's a lack of self-awareness, and self-awareness doesn't only come from psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. It's not for everybody, but that's a good first stop shop. To look under the hood and to actually say, what is going on around here, which you clearly have done. I mean, it sounds like your entire life, which is rare, as I keep saying. People often are very uncomfortable looking at themselves. They just don't want to do it, and they have a lot of reasons not to look. A lot of terrifying reasons. A lot of things that are mysterious. They don't want to do it. One of the things I learned very quickly in graduate school is, the power of the inquiry. It's called the psychiatric inquiry, by one of my favorite theorists, which works on almost everybody, but it doesn't work on everybody, and it's based on the clinician's capacity to be curious about the other person, to be genuinely curious, and not to assume that you have any answers, and certainly not to assume, you know, not to assume that you're going to make this person into some, idea of who you think they should be. But what is it like to be you? Questions like, what's it like to be you? Questions like, what's it like to have your daughter? Doesn't matter. The inquiry, the curiosity. A lot of people, most people, respond very well to that. There are other people who run screaming from the room that can't handle it. So that's one of those big differences.
I've got another question for you. So
Yeah.
when people come to me, they often want a certain result. Could be they want to lose weight, could be they're recovering from an ACL injury, or they want to learn how to box, whatever it may be. And the idea is they hire me and I take them from A to B. However, implicit in that, I've got my own views of what that journey should be like, and often I have my views about where the end point is. So someone could have like I said, a knee replacement, and they just want to get it fixed. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, what does that really mean? That means they should be able to do a box jump, they can squat 80 kilos, whatever. When people come to you, how do you gauge like what the end point is? If someone comes to you and they feel not right, they don't feel right mentally.
Right.
How do they know how they want to feel, or do you lead them in knowing how they should feel?
That's a
It just
great
seems
question.
so hard in your field compared. Mine is really straightforward.
Well, I think, right. I think there's similarities and differences. I mean, I think, I used to joke with a colleague of mine years ago. If patient when patients come into a clinical office, they give you what's called the presenting problem, right?
Okay.
Um, and and often what they think of as the presenting problem, in my mind, is not the problem, right? I had
Hmm.
I had a
Yeah,
patient
that makes
years ago.
sense.
I had a patient years ago who thought his problem was that his wife was too fat, and to the point where he showed me pictures of her. She was not too fat, in my opinion. And then he actually asked if I could see her, and I said, okay. She came in. Clearly, this is not the problem, but he thinks it's a problem. So before I address his presenting problem, I've got to get him curious about why he thinks that's the problem. Right? Where are we going from here? But your question is very interesting to me because that's a question that, when answered, will provide you with the answer for what kind of treatment you want. So there are people who simply want symptom relief, and they don't really care about anything else. They want to stop yelling. They want to stop yelling. You know, I don't take patients like this anymore. I've been taking them for years. But if someone comes to me and they say, I want to stop smoking, or I want to stop yelling, and they're not interested in that as a symptom. They think that's the cause. Then I don't treat them. I send them to someone else. Someone else will do that. Cognitive behavioral folks who I respect, that's what they do. You go in there and they will be interested in and engaging you with your symptoms, and they'll be interested in getting rid of them, and then their job's done. I'm always much more interested in why you think that's the problem, you the patient, and also where does it come from, and what else, what other larger issues is it articulating?
But how do you know what the end point is?
Well, like the French poet Valéry said, a poem is never finished; it's abandoned. And I think that's true of psychotherapy and psychoanalysis. I think it's often true of relationships. Relationships continue whether you see the person or not. And so the end
Yeah.
point, if people are interested in end points, I mean that's worth saying. Then I typically refer them elsewhere. I mean, if that's how they're thinking, like they want to get from here to there, then my the the kind of work I do is not going to be satisfying to them. I'm I work under the assumption that with people who are curious enough and psychologically engaged enough, they're going to discover the answers, if there are any, or the cure if there is one. Not me. I don't know what it is, and I think that's one of the distinct differences between psychoanalysis, and psychoanalytic psychotherapy, and other forms of treatment, that we don't, as a clinicians, we do not have an idea of what you should look like,
Ah, okay.
and we're not interested in it.
Interesting.
We're interested in getting to know you on a deep basis and helping you discover who you are. But it's not up to me. I can point the light in general directions, but I'm not going to make you into some
And
version.
how about if someone was like unhappy? Would you not necessarily strive to help them to be happier, or is that not important?
One of my favorite articles is written by a very smart, I'm sure, unfortunately dead, Swede, called "Happiness is for Pigs." Um, I think the single state striving that we have in this country, the striving to be happy, the striving for nirvana, the striving for financial this and that, um, single state striving is really misguided, because the human being cannot have one feeling only. There's no
Hmm.
such thing unless you have a brain tumor or something. I mean, you can't do that. If you think you have single states, then you simply lack the language, or you lack the facility to put words to feelings. You're not in a single state ever. So happiness, I'm not a big fan of happiness. I'm a big fan of engagement. I think engagement is really important. And I think being able to embrace more versus less of who you are is a good goal to have. But other than that, you know, happiness is for pigs, I think.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's overrated. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll tell you a really, I was thinking about this, and someone just asked me this the other day. Uh, I can tell you one or two really embarrassing examples of my clinical work where I thought to myself, what am I doing here? And learned from.
Hmm.
And I was going to ask you similarly, like could you tell us some, can you tell us some example of how you stumbled and learned from it? I'll go first if you want me to.
Yeah, you go first. Just because I'm more interested in your mistakes than my own.
So this is pretty racy, but what the hell. So I was I wasn't even in PhD school. I was just doing prereq work to get into PhD school, and I was a research assistant being paid no money, and we had to interview all kinds of potential patients for this psychotherapy research project. And there's a thing in my field called the DSM, which is the Bible for psychiatric difficulties. It's a phone book thick worth of, everything from schizophrenia to hives. And you, when someone comes in, you learn to ask them questions about their mood and their background and blah, 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 blah. And I was very nervous, extremely nervous. And this very attractive young woman was also really nervous. I was supposed to interview her for the project. And so, you start and you go through the mood disorders. And if they answer yes enough times, and you stay, and if they say no, you keep going. So we got through the mood disorders, and she's trembling with anxiety, and I'm basically the same way. How's your mood? Do you have a blue mood 4 out of 7 days? Yes, no, blah, blah, blah. Everything's fine. And I turned the page to this mimeograph. That's how long ago it was. This mimeograph sheet. I turned the page, and it says, and I say, "Does your anus burn after intercourse?" And I was so nervous, I just said it. And she was so nervous, she said, "No." I said, "Good," and I kept going. Someone had Xeroxed the urology questionnaire. Someone had Xeroxed the urology questionnaire on this. I thought, holy shit, like, what did I do? But I learned, and she just assumed that I knew what I was doing because I'm the guy with the clipboard, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought, pay more attention. Don't just say anything. I think I would have said, 3 sandwiches to go, please, if that's what had been written down there. Anyway, so.
I love that. Well, I'm constantly stumbling. I mean, my job is various different aspects. So I guess my main 2 roles are, one, as a coach. I still coach people one-to-one, and that's been a journey. I started that when I was 16. I first started personal training in my early 20s. Living in Australia, I was charging $5 an hour, which is like $2 US. I think that's how bad I was, and I wasn't worth it. I was overcharging, definitely overcharging. So when I look back, it was laughable how bad the coaching was. But then what I think, and I kind of realized this relatively early on within my first sort of 1,000 hours of coaching, is I have to be able to look back on the last 6 months and think that was bad, because if I don't, it means I'm stagnating.
Yeah.
So I should look back. So when I look back on coaching I did 3 years ago, there should be, I'm not embarrassed by it, but there are things I do differently now.
Yeah.
So it should be like a journey.
Right.
I used to, when I first started, I did this for like 4 years, 5 years, and I was really religious about it. Every time I finished a one-to-one session, I'd spend half an hour by myself with a pen and paper, writing down what I did well, what I did badly, and what I can do about it. And I probably should have stayed with it forever, but I did it for a few years and that was enough. But that kind of built a habit, which I still have now. When I finish a session, even when I finish this with you, I'll be like, okay, what did I like about that? What didn't I? What could I have done better? And I can't help myself. My brain's been trained into that. So I'm hoping my level of performance in whatever I do, hopefully it's gone up over the years.
That's so thoughtful. Were your parents this way? Were they as
well? They were academics.
Yeah. Right.
My dad was a sociologist. He was a professor, and my mum was a lecturer. So I guess I had a slight academic. I don't know. Is that academic? I don't know.
Sure.
I guess so. I don't know. I think you get into habits, don't you? And then you don't really think about them.
Right, but I think I just wonder in terms of modeling, if from an early age you saw this kind of thoughtfulness as something to.
I think it's more of a reaction, because when I started personal training, I was like 24 or so. For the 5 years previous, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I taught different sports. True, but after that, I worked in bars. I did construction work. I did telesales, door-to-door sales. I built all kinds of stuff. I mean, literally like 30, 40 random low-paid rubbish jobs in random countries. And it was great lifestyle, but I didn't really throw myself into anything. And then when I found personal training, I was like, okay, I want to take this seriously now, because I was kind of bored of being broke. And I was kind of ready to apply my somewhat sort of confident attitude to the world and sort of my personality and my passion and my energy to one thing. So I guess I just wanted to do it well, you
For
know? So
sure.
it kind of made sense to me. It's like, hey, why don't I just make sure I get better? If I get better every, if I want to get really good in a year's time, then I need to sort of push myself now and, try and do things which are slightly out of my comfort zone, which I did. I mean, even like with personal training, I actually started advertising for clients when I was halfway through the course, which is not legal or ethical. But I was just like, I figured, well, if I want to be good, I need some experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started off in that kind of track of, always trying to go a bit beyond. And then when I remember my first athlete came to me, he was a triathlete, professional triathlete, national level triathlete in Australia, came to me and said, "Oh, can you help me?" And I was like in my 20s and I looked pretty fit. And I was like, yeah, I know everything about triathlons. I had no idea about triathlons. So I spent, hours and hours studying. And then I trained a triathlete. Then you train another. Then a ballerina comes to you. Say, oh, do you know how to train ballerinas? Of course I do. It's a bit like an actor. You say, oh, can you speak French and ride a horse and do swords? Yes. Then you learn it. And you go through this kind of
Right.
like pretending, like that you're good at everything. And then you fast forward like 5, 10 years and you realize, oh, actually now I do know how to train ballerinas and
Yeah.
triathletes and whatever. But
Right.
it's always sort of pushing yourself to train the tricky people makes you better in a way.
Yeah, for sure. I love
Yeah.
that. And I think yeah, there's something what is even medical school, right? You see one, you do one, you teach one. That's what you do. I also think for some of us, and it took me quite a while, much longer than you. I think at a certain point you start to take yourself seriously, in a good way. It's like you have these adventures and you do all kinds of things. And at a certain point you go, okay, I got to do some, heavier shit right now. I got to make this work.
Yeah, that happened to me very, very clearly it was the day after I got engaged. That's when I was 33, 34, and I'd just come back from a year living in Thailand, like fighting, not working. So I was kind of acting like a kid, to be honest. And I got engaged. And then I was like, okay, I should really do something with my career. I should really focus on, I've got to look after someone now.
Yeah.
Even though like we live in a modern world, I still can't help feeling like as a guy, I need to look after my wife. So like financially and, emotionally and the rest of it. So that's when I figured I should really grow up and I
Mm,
wanted to grow. I was ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that changed. That's when I became not just self-employed. I set up a limited company, like a business, and I started having people work for me. And then I set up another one, and things kind of grew. My kind of brand grew, and I started taking more seriously the lucky position I was in, having trained lots of interesting people around the world, and decided to actually grow a brand and a business out of it, rather than
mm,
just be a self-employed trainer.
everything.
So yeah, it all started that day when I got engaged.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Um, Apropos of what we were speaking about before we started, your website, as I said, is so unusual to me in that it is clearly no nonsense. There's a great sense of competence and confidence in the website, and it's also very funny, and it's also quite playful and sometimes irreverent,
Hmm.
which is really appealing to me. But this is not. You do not look like you do not look like every other Joe out there. I mean, very much your personality shines through. Um, what's going on there? That's really wonderful. How do
Thank you. I mean, I think the trick in when you're trying to promote yourself or your business is to be honest and authentic. So, I've done this for a long time, and I I want to attract the kind of clients and customers which I know I can help the most. So the best way of doing that is being yourself.
right?
Not pretending to be something. So I've tried to be. It's hard because websites are just what when you write your bio, for example, on a website, there are a million things you can write. And I spent quite a long time writing mine. I was like, because I really wanted to be my, I really wanted to feel like me talking, even though it's just typing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think
Sure.
it takes like a
Yeah.
few times to do it. But yeah, I think the trick is just being, if you know yourself, then it's easier to be yourself.
Is it?
Right. And then when then you don't mind if you're completely honest, you don't mind if people don't like you or do
Right.
like you. It doesn't, to be honest, I mean, if people like what I do or don't like, it doesn't really matter because no one really knows. Unless you haven't lived with me for a decade, you don't really know me.
Right.
You're going to see versions of me, so that it doesn't really bother me that much. So I figured, I'll just be as honest as I can. So, I definitely want to appeal to the kind of people I want to hang out with. So the fact that you liked it, for me, that's a real positive because I wanted to appeal to intelligent, curious, interesting people.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
don't really want to make it appeal to the masses because I don't care.
yeah. Right.
So job well done, I guess, if you liked it. So thank you.
Yeah. No, I think one of the, I think the word entrepreneur is a very hot word right now. And I think many
Mm,
people so label themselves and don't really want it. But those of us who do, I mean, one of the reasons I did what I got on my course is that, and before I really knew anything about this, I thought, Jesus, if I become a clinical psychologist, I can work for myself. I
yeah, it's
thought
great, right?
that's really, I really like that. So yeah, so I get that. Um, I had a thought that just flew out of my head. What was it? Oh, do you have any like second like lieutenants? Like, do you have a what's your corporate structure like?
It's changed. It goes. I mean, normally it changes depending what's going on, but I normally have a few permanent staff and then lots of people who are like contract basis.
Mhm.
That's how it works. But I've tried. I went. You asked a question earlier about kind of mistakes and learning, and I talked about like the personal training side of things, which has gone on a journey. Running a business is also a part of what I do, and that's been a much more humbling journey because it hasn't been a
True.
straight line. It's been lots of massive mistakes, huge mistakes. I remember
Oh,
putting my life savings essentially and my next year's tax savings all into this one project, this whole video DVD series, which I produced and created and I got like actors and dancers and a whole crew, and we filmed it all. It completely took all my money, and at the end of it, it was so bad I just shelved it. And it was
oh,
just that was a lesson, if we put it
yeah,
nicely. Yeah,
for sure.
that was a lesson. But those kind of lessons you remember,
Yeah,
when it's your
yeah.
own money and your own time and like your own stupidity, but it's your fault as
Oh,
well. When you're like, because if you hire people to help you and they do a bad job, well, it's your fault for hiring badly. So you can't get round the fact that it's completely your fault when things mess
yeah,
up. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, we don't need a sound person. We can do that. And it's like, then there's no sound at all for like one of the videos. You're like, oh, okay, we're doing this. We do need a sound person. um, but yeah, lots of mistakes on the business side of things. I'm so sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I forgot what the question was.
No, I did too. They were the same.
It's just rambling.
Too many stimulating ideas here. Is there a is there a type of person, or is there a commonality of the folks who come knocking at your door?
um, I mean, we have three main types of clients, as I guess nowadays. We have our personal training clients. We also have our mentoring clients. We do quite a lot of business mentoring, and we also, um, on top of that, we also do. We have these online programs, like subscription-based programs, which we have customers all over the world for. With the online programs, it's pretty varied. I don't really get involved that much because it's all like pre-written, pre-filmed stuff, and we have people
Mhm.
signing up every day, new people, and that's kind of the main way my business makes money.
Mhm.
So customers come from all over the place, depending on where we advertise. So that's
Mhm.
that side of things, and it's quite relatively cheap. So there's no barriers to entry. So if people want to kind of get my help, they can just sign up and get on with it.
Right.
Um, with the mentoring side of things, it tends to be gym owners and wellness entrepreneurs, fitness entrepreneurs, personal trainers, people who own studios. A lot of people own studios, a lot of people in the States as well. They own studios and they're a bit stuck in terms of where to go, like how to build their brand. So I get a lot of fellow coaches wanting my assistance in building their brand and expanding.
Mhm.
And in terms of the personal training side of things, it's at the moment, it's for the last 10 years, it's been pretty much, it's all entertainment industry. It's mainly actors, but there's a whole bunch of models as well and the occasional musician. But it's
Mhm.
very rarely corporate people nowadays, like I think one person who works in a business now, but nearly always it's that kind of world. Mainly
Hmm.
actors. That's kind of what I specialize in nowadays.
Hmm.
How fascinating!
Creatives, you know.
What a great varied series of skills you must have to be able to do that.
Well, it's nice. It's nice being around creative people because I don't see myself as that creative, but a lot of people around me, my wife is very creative, and people I work with are creative, and my clients are very creative. So I'm hoping it kind of rubs off on me a little bit. So it's yeah, it's important if you're going to spend time with people, coaching them. You need more than just money. You need to be inspired yourself. Otherwise, you can't. You know, you need that close relationship I talked about earlier, and it has to be more than just like me sort of them being a nice person. I need more than that. I need to be inspired too. So that's why I'm quite selective in terms of who I work with one to one.
Yeah,
And then when it gels, then it's amazing. Um, but yeah,
you have to feel
yeah,
connected.
yeah. I mean, I can we can all connect with anyone, but I want to be inspired too.
Yeah,
And it's like
yeah,
I want
yeah.
to be emotionally invested in my clients. I'm not a robot, and I really want to care about if they fix their elbow or lose 2 inches off their hips. If you don't really care
Hmm.
about someone that much, you don't care how big their biceps are. But if you really care about them, then you start caring about these things. You kind of
Of
live
course.
vicariously through them.
Yeah. Well, this is wonderful. Do you have any other questions for me before we stop?
Yeah. Um, got my notes. Um, in terms of mental health, it's linked slightly to what I asked earlier. Like in a if you wanted to if you wanted to figure out where your health is, you could do a load of different blood tests and scans. If you wanted to check your movement or your strength or your coordination or flexibility, there's various tests. How do we self-assess our mental health?
That's such a great question. I, I used to, I used to torture my graduate students years ago by saying, tell me what's neurotic about neurosis, or tell me what's psychotic about psychosis. In other words, what's the problem, right? And
Hmm.
I think that's a great question. I can't answer it in one way, but I can respond by asking other questions. I ask
Go for
people,
it.
what's the problem? So for so many examples, someone will come in and they say the problem is I'm drinking too much. I say, okay, how much are you drinking? And they'll say whatever that is. And assuming it's not like 2 quarts of gin a day, I'll say, okay, why is that a problem? And there's a very famous Henry Comager. I remember his name. God, I can't believe it. A very famous American historian. I think he wrote American history at a bar for years, and he had 4 martinis every day. Um, and if I had 4 martinis, I'd be hospitalized. But he wasn't, and there was apparently not a problem for him. I mean, it's obviously you're cruising for a bruising, as they say. 4 martinis at lunch, but there was no marital problems. There was no problems with kids. He was fine. And there are people like that. So what's the problem? Sometimes the problem, no, excuse me. Sometimes the person doesn't feel that there's a problem, but other people do. Then that's the problem. The problem is you're going to get arrested. The problem is you're going to get divorced. Um, so I think that question has to be responded to by other questions. Um, I have my own feelings. I think most of the world is pretty nuts, and I would wish that everyone had the benefit of my clinical education, because one of the things that blows your mind when you have to spend a year on a mental health ward, a locked ward, is that a lot of those folks look just like you and me. They look just fine, smart, good looking, happy, and they're absolutely raving mad. And sometimes they're really dangerous. They look just like you and me. And there are many examples like that with less severity. So I would say, how do you know? That's a good question to ask. And then the answer should be rooted in something physical. How do you know it's a problem? And I think one of the reasons I used to say that to my graduate students is that it goes a certain distance to confronting our own bias, right? Like we're all
Hmm.
biased. I was going to kick out of the court system. It says, can you be unbiased? People go, oh, I can be unbiased. It's like, that's ridiculous. Of course you can't be unbiased. You're all biased. Just a question of how. Um, so yeah, what's the problem? Um, that's where I think one of the services that I hope I provide is a clarification of the problem, which is often a great benefit for people. I don't think this is a problem. I think that's a problem. That's helpful often. And then if the patient can, recognize that as a problem, then we can work on it. But it's not it's typically not mysterious, the problem. It's not, you don't I don't have to go home and scratch my head about it. It's like, this is the problem. What's the, it's like from a literary standpoint, right? If you're writing and you assume that you're writing to someone, if they know what they're doing, they will say, the sentence on page 3 should be your opening sentence. It's like, right.
Hmm.
It's like, what's the headline? What is this really about? Anyway, that's a long-winded, rambling way of answering your question.
I always found it interesting you mentioned the kind of person drinking martinis, that the most stable, positive, balanced people in the world don't really change the world. It's the slightly unbalanced, not necessarily happiest, wildly creatives, which kind of make big strides in business and politics, in literature and poetry and music and
Right.
in the rest of the world. So I've been exposed, luckily, for my work, to a lot of creative people. They're not always the most extremely creative, aren't always the most happiest, as it were. I know it's a bit of a
Right.
dumb way of saying it, but they've definitely got issues. And is that a bad thing?
Yeah,
You know?
no, I don't think it's a bad thing or a good thing. I think, you know, you've lit on something I always find interesting to think about, which not everybody is happy hearing, but none of this is one size fits all.
Mm.
Right? None of this is one size fits all. I mean, so someone's idea of a balanced, integrated life could strike someone else as being like bizarre and chaotic. Right?
Yeah.
What's your balance? It doesn't mean fit me into a program and off I go. It's like maybe I want to have four more days of lunch, or maybe I want to work during the night, or maybe I want to record myself on I mean, it doesn't matter, right? But it's the balance. Balance is a wonderful. I mean, it's kind of sounds like gobbledygook, but I always find it helpful. The interpersonal psychoanalysts talk about having mutual but asymmetrical impact, which I think is really interesting. It's a mutual impact, meaning it's just from field theory, right? If you have two people in a room, they're influencing one another necessarily. We don't necessarily know how, but they're necessarily influencing each other. But they're influencing each other in different ways, right?
Yeah.
That's the asymmetry. So I think that's something that I try to remember, when I'm working, is that this person's, because sometimes I don't, I get worried about patients. I get worried about patients drinking 4 martinis a day, or staying up all night, or doing whatever they're doing. But as long as I don't think their safety is at stake, and as long as I don't think that they're a harm to, any threat to themselves or other people, I let them be. I don't go near it. If they are doing things that are risky, I will at a certain point say, that's risky. but I'm not gonna. I'm not, as I say, in the business of turning them into some simulacrum of who I think they should be.
I've got one other question, because I get asked this a lot. Um, it's regarding body image. Like, a lot of people come to me and they want to feel better about their bodies. They
Mm-hmm.
want to love their body, for example. It's quite a trendy thing to say. I want to love my body. My argument is that I don't think we should inherently just love our bodies unless we show it love by looking after it, for example. Um, but should we, because body image is so linked to self-esteem, should most of us strive to have like a better body image, or should we be, my point of view, kind of more realistic and maybe not love our bodies? If we treat our bodies, if we take drugs every day, sit on the sofa, watch Netflix, what's wrong with hating our bodies?
No, I'm with you. I think two things come to mind. One is optics, which is just everywhere, and to be challenged. And how many of my patients are controlled by how things look, bodies, wealth, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think one way of understanding this is, what's our relationship with our bodies.
Hmm.
And like when couples come in and they say that they want to stay together, I often ask them why, and that's not a goal. I'm not interested in staying together or splitting up. I'm interested in in telling them what I think is going on, and then they can
Yeah.
do whatever they want to do. So if your relationship with your body is one of torture and shame, then that's worth talking about. But that has to be a conversation that precedes, I love my body. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's as ridiculous as, happiness is, is to strive for. That's just nuts.
Yeah, maybe I spend too much time with people who are like 19-year-olds on Instagram and TikTok, but that's you need to stay well away from that, otherwise you can get very upset.
Well, I have a 20-year-old daughter who just came back from school, and I love if she stays with me. She lives with me when she's here, and she and her friends, the conversations that they have, it's like, oh my God, am I fat? Is this too tight? Is this not right? It's really like, don't can't we talk about something more interesting, like making ice? I mean,
It's part, we have to go through a superficial phase, I guess.
of
It's all
course,
part. I'm sure you weren't always like quoting Jung and Nietzsche when you were like 19, right?
of course,
So
of course, absolutely right.
it's all part of the journey.
All right, listen, Dan Roberts, thank you so much. This is such fun.
My pleasure. I love talking with you. Thank you for reaching out.
Okay, if you want to get a hold of Dan Roberts, it's Dan Roberts Group. Dan at danrobertsgroup.com.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's my
thanks.
email. If you want to email me, or you could just go to the website, or you can just, you don't have to do anything. You can just listen to this conversation and carry on with your life. Maybe just do that. It's all good.
Okay,
I don't need anything from you.
all right, that's great.
All right, buddy. Well,
All right,
been a pleasure.
it's
See
been
you
a
around.
pleasure. Thank you.